G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day wherever you are, whether it's a Saturday, a Sunday, a Friday. I don't know where you are, I don't know what time zones you're in, but I hope that you're having a fantastic day and spending some time with your loved ones. So today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to look over the maps. We're then going to have a look at the New York Times article about the casualties in Russia and Ukraine, because it's caused quite a stir online. And I just want to weigh in with my 2 cents worth on that, because I'm a YouTuber. That's what we bloody do. We're going to talk about some other little bits and pieces of news, and then look over some bits of footage as well. So I'll chuck the footage in the beginning, because YouTube's all about watch time. If I can keep you guys interested for longer than bloody this head can make you hear, it's the way to make these videos. Anyway, yesterday I did speak about that a Russian Ka-52 attack helicopter was taken down by a MANPAD, of course, a manned portable air defense system. And as I was actually making that, I did think to myself, I've never actually seen like an ejection from a helicopter in video. Now, I'm sure it's probably videoed somewhere, but I hadn't seen it. And there's been a few like interesting videos come out from this. Like, I think it was a Su-25, a Russian pilot, had like a GoPro on his head as he ejected out of the aircraft. And like that was like the first time we'd ever actually seen footage like that. I think, for instance, I think the tail grabbed on a power line and it lifted the plane straight up and boosted out. Footage fucking wild. But we have that footage here. So this is the Ka-52. Now, with all these videos, it's the cameraman's not doing the greatest job. We have then 2 Ka-52s. I'm actually going to scroll through this because it frame by frame will be easier. And then we come off, and then we see it hit down here. So I'll play it in real time. There, we see it. So you can't really tell how it comes through there, but that isn't being hit. In my mind, it's been hit, and that is then the ejection seat from there. So they're flying here. It comes out of frame. I reckon it was struck there. And then we see, then boost, the guy then ejecting out of there. Yeah, so we do see that ejection from there, and the footage is a bit hard to show. The footage is very difficult to then follow. Something very interesting we see is this is then the crash site of this Ka-52 chopper here burning up. And then we see from this drone, then we see a Mi-8 or transport style helicopter come in and pick up the down pilot here. Now, as you remember from yesterday's video, if you watched it, that one pilot was killed and one survived the injection. So we see then just here, I'm guessing this is then the load master here. There's 2 guys out of the chopper here. Lodi jumps in, and then this guy, I'm guessing who is the pilot here, comes on. Anyone who knows sort of anything about ejections is they are incredibly rough, so he could be fairly injured as well. So jumps up in the chopper. Chopper takes off. And then we can see the landing site here. Now, if this footage wasn't in one shot, you know, we see a lot of this. We see like a drone coming in, and then it cuts to a different shot and it being struck. Now, I'm not saying all of that is fake, but there are definitely videos that are stitched a bit suspiciously sometimes. So then we see that transporter then move out of there, and that, of course, then burning up on the ground. So that is very interesting. We don't really see that many helicopter evacuations. It may have been the second one here. I'm not sure if these are 2 Ka-52s or that was the Mi-8 turned around and grabbed the guy. We're not really sure on that, but we don't really see many like helicopter evacuations off the front line, just because helicopters are such a target, slow moving, they need to be really close to the ground. We just don't see that too much sort of in and out as quickly as we can. Now, not a day goes past where I don't get asked about what I think the casualty figures are in Ukraine for Russia and, of course, the Ukrainian Armed Force. And I've been dragged across Twitter before by, you know, official Ukrainian sources and branded as an information terrorist when I reported on geolocated footage from a demonstration in Kyiv from parents, as they suggest, claiming Ukraine is underreporting the casualties. So this is what then was released here, and this is months old, don't worry about this. Australian journalist Matthew Williams, OAM, claimed Ukraine is deliberately underreporting the number of military casualties, and that parents of dead missing soldiers allegedly came out to protest in Kyiv. So obviously here, info terror, information terrorist. I think a pretty big branding. Anyway, I think that if Ukraine is not reporting casualty figures, then I'm somewhat correct. But through some backdoor channels, I actually found out another journalist who just doesn't like me was close with an employee at this organisation, and that's actually how this came through to fruition. So I'm not very worried about it. But as I always say, actually, if you want to watch the full video on this, there's another video here. Got to plug myself, we'll go with it. But as I always say, don't trust just one source, and this includes myself. All propaganda has a level of truth shaded then in misinformation. So it has to be somewhat then believable and pushed from there. And don't think that there aren't people with some sort of affiliation here with branding, states, whatever, going on across many different platforms. And it doesn't matter which side. Now, casualty figures to this are no exception to propaganda. It is absolutely important for both Ukraine and Russia to maintain as much public support as possible. And by not publishing official casualty figures, it's a fair tactic. It's probably something we would do in a similar war like this. But this is never going to stop speculation. Now, anyone who follows the core body of work that I will do will know that at heart I'm a humanitarian, that I believe in humans, that the majority of humans are good. And this is from my experience of travelling something like 20 countries. I'm not sure what I've actually done. Assalamu alaikum. We're getting all the selfie apparently.
صورنا صورة بالكاميرا معلم شاركنا صورة
Do this?
على أول صورة جماعي.
But I have a lot of empathy for anyone killed, wounded, affected by external circumstances. And I also come from an army rifleman background, so I understand that there are times where lethal force is absolutely necessary. And I always believe in someone's right to determination and, of course, self-defense, using up to any force really necessary. I understand, no matter the ideology, flag people fall under, that these are still humans. They've got parents, siblings, children's hopes and dreams. Now, the St. Javelin put up this on Twitter today, which I thought was pretty good, that the Ukrainian graves, his father, wife, son, friend, my love, mum, and I can't read what this one is over here, but that is very true. But that's true for both sides. These people had children, siblings, parents, and hopes and dreams. Especially those men who are mobilised, who are forced to go to the front lines, often against their will. And it saddens me to see the complete disregard for human life by a large percentage of the community, especially from those online who have never even considered putting on a fucking uniform. And they actually believe that they're helping the fight from their keyboard, especially then monetizing it and making their career off that. And as I've heard before from other people in this work, I don't care if it's true, as long as it makes money. And Oryx shared this in a reply that I thought worded so great. Let me get this straight. I'm supposed to stay neutral while reporting losses. But wait, not too neutral, because that would make me anti-Ukrainian. In essence, only when it suits your narrative. And I think that is a way so many people actually see this. So what actually are the figures? Well, we don't know. But we do know that they're going to be very high. But getting accurate figures, it would be nearly impossible. Even after this war, like many conflicts, I think we'll be left with a range. But New York Times has published this article today talking about these potential figures. So it is titled Troop Deaths and Injuries in Ukraine War, nearly 500,000, being 500,000. That Ukraine and Russia have lost a staggering number of troops as Kyiv's counteroffensive drags on. A lack of rapid medical care has added to the toll. And I see this with, say, like the Russian forces don't have CAT tourniquets, which is just, in my mind, crazy. You do see them on guys, but it's not every single guy. And every single soldier should have a CAT tourniquet. I don't care where you are. Like, I carry CAT tourniquets in my car, things like this. It's a bloody good idea to do. And this rapid medical care, this is something we've actually seen Zelensky talking a lot about in the past couple of days, that the medical care needs to be better. The speed from guy off the front line through. And if you actually look at the figures from the First and Second World War of people that could have been saved from something like emergency bleeding control, tourniquets, things like that, it's a staggering figure. It continues. the total number of Ukrainian and Russian troops killed or wounded since the war in Ukraine began 18 months ago is nearing 500,000 from US officials. A staggering toll as Russia assaults its next-door neighbour and tries to seize more territory. The officials cautioned that casualty figures remained difficult to estimate because Moscow is believed to routinely undercount its war dead and injured, and Kyiv does not disclose official figures. But they said the slaughter intensified this year in eastern Ukraine and has continued at a steady clip as nearly 3-month-old counter-offensive drags on. Now, if you're wondering why I'm drinking, it's hot water. I had a guy reach out to me, he's like a speech pathologist who does speech work and strengthens voices, and he's like, for singers, it's like, have some hot water with you. It'll help run over your vocal cords and help you. And it actually is. Now, this is the interesting part. Russia's military casualties, the officials said, are approaching 300,000. The number includes as many as 120,000 deaths, 170,000 to 180,000 injured troops. The Russian numbers dwarf the Ukrainian figures, which the officials put at close to 70,000 killed and 100,000 to 120,000 wounded. But Russians outnumber Ukrainians on the battlefield almost 3 to 1, and Russia has a larger population from which to replenish its ranks. Now, what do I believe? What do I think about these numbers? Well, let's look at what the Minister of Defense of Ukraine said today. So they're putting their figure at 256,000 Russians have been killed here, almost 260,000, with this number really floating between 400 to 800 a day. Now, what do I think of all these numbers? I don't trust any of these numbers personally, because I just think it would be impossible to actually get these figures. How are you, if Russia is saying they would kill this many guys, but they're sending over thermobaric weapons, or you're striking bases well behind the line in Russia or in occupied territories for Ukraine, how are you getting really accurate figures? Now, there are places that do, we're looking online for obituaries, things like this, but those figures are greatly reduced. They're much smaller. They're in the tens of thousands. So I don't know about these figures. I think the Russian one is very high considering the amount of Russians that first entered the country. This would be almost half, which I don't see how when I say professional army, I mean not conscripted reserves. I don't see how that would still be functioning at that many deaths, but they've had 18 months. They can replenish ranks. To go from a civilian to a fully trained soldier in Australian army terms is maybe 7 months, and they've got a lot of time to do that. It's probably significantly shorter. The Ukrainian figures, 70,000 killed. I don't know as well. We've had other officials say before that it's over 100,000 for both sides, but a lot of people will talk about casualties, and they're talking full people injured, killed, everything in that. But you get what I'm getting at, that the injured does have a big scope of, can you actually return to the fight? Are you permanently disabled? Things like that. So these figures, until this war's over and the UN or someone does figures, I'm not believing any of it. But I do think that these are probably in the realm of correct, but I think Ukraine would be, sadly, I believe it would be higher than this because of just the estimation of civilians that have been killed, and that is easier to estimate. And I've seen people that 1,000. These numbers are fucking huge. These are just numbers on a screen. Think of where you live. I'm not sure if you live in a city or whatever, but the city I live in is about 1.2 million people. So this is 1 in 10. These are staggering numbers, and I hope for both sides the numbers are bloody lower than this, but we just don't know. So Ukraine has around 500,000 troops, including active duty, reserve, and paramilitary troops, according to analysts. By contrast, Russia has almost triple that, with 1.3 million active duty, reserve, and paramilitary troops, most of the latter from Wagner Group. Now, we know they've got a lot of paramilitary forces from not only private companies, but other oligarch figures too. But this number of 1.3 million, that is skewed too, because Russia's with national service, things like this, that does get skewed a lot further up. Oh, my water went in there. A little string of my jumper. The Biden administration's last public estimate of casualties came in November when General Mark A. Miley, the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, said that more 100,000 troops on each side had been killed or wounded. There we talk about killed or wounded, so we don't know the breakdown in this. But officials said privately the numbers were closer to 120,000 killed or wounded. That number has soared in the winter and spring as the two countries turn to the eastern city of Bakhmut into a killing field. So we know in Bakhmut there were probably tens of thousands on both sides killed. We know that Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of Wagner PMC, did put what he said in the tens of thousands of guys killed there, and Wagner was absolutely a meat grinder, I believe, for both sides, that it ground down from there. It affected Russia's offensive capability massively, and also affected Ukraine's offensive capability massively. I know that hindsight is the foresight of arseholes, but I do think, what if Ukraine just sort of let Bakhmut go back to where it is now? How would this counteroffensive go from there? Would have saved a lot of men's lives, a lot of equipment. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not in the position to make those sort of calls. The opening weeks of Kyiv's counteroffensive this summer were particularly difficult for Ukraine. In the early phase, Western-trained Ukrainian troops struggled to employ combined arms maneuvers. So, of course, these combined arms, tanks, infantry, helicopters, artillery, all of these different arms working together to have maneuver-style warfare. That is incredibly difficult. And I actually think, and I've talked to a lot of guys about this last weekend when I was at that veterans event, people just assume the West would automatically be able to do large-scale combined arms maneuver, like we've seen on Talisman Sabre. And these guys are good soldiers. Do not get me wrong. And this is what I did for a job. The Western militaries would still, in this size of warfare, there would still have to be some level of ramping up, because even by the end of the years, we get to semi-large scale, combined arms maneuver, but not this large. This is a very, very, very difficult thing to actually do, especially when your training has majority been wartime training as well. Our troops initially tried to break through the dug-in Russian lines with mechanized combined arms formations, and we sort of have seen this change from these maneuver-style warfare to more just hitting the Russians dead on in Uzani, Robotyne, places like that, pushing through those minefields, pushing through the artillery there, but bogged down in dense Russian minefields under constant fire from artillery and the chopper gunships. Like I spoke about at the beginning, the K-52s were very effective. In the first 2 weeks of the counteroffensive, as much as 20% of the weaponry Ukraine sent to the battlefield was damaged or destroyed, according to US and European officials. So it's one of those things, and this is all to do with, of course, the casualty figures, but it's just difficult to know. We won't know. But in the question of what do I think of these figures, it just means that millions of people's lives have been changed forever. So let's just say so far the war has claimed 200,000 people's lives on combining both sides. If each of us have, say, 10 people that truly love us, that's 2 million people whose life has been completely ripped apart, and that is a huge number. And if then we go out to your friends, your extended friends, your mutual friends, things like that, especially now social media, that goes into the tens of millions from there. There would not be one Ukrainian who hasn't had their life changed by someone killed, hurt, or injured, or probably one Russian either. I know multiple people who have been killed over there. But furthermore on this number, it's going to skyrocket. It's going to continue up. Look at what they talk about, the amount of people that were killed in Bakhmut. Bakhmut was a fairly insignificant, smaller city. Now, this war is not going anywhere, and both sides are showing no sign of slowing down. Once these defensive lines are potentially then breached, and fighting will then ensue in cities, Luhansk, Donetsk, in Sevastopol, places like this, that will be an absolute bloodbath. This is where we're going to see these figures skyrocket. And I hope the civilians in these areas, no matter their stance, are given fair warning and safe haven out of these areas. And I think the West should doing something of more can we move you out if, Ukraine is going, they're going to go into Donetsk. Can we sort out some 1 day ceasefire or some shit? I don't know. Can we work to get these people out of here? I know I'm maybe just bloody hopeless hoping for this, but if fighting ensues into those cities, that is going to be unbelievable. Combined arms with everything in a urban environment, the crossfire, the people who are going to get caught up in this is going to be catastrophic. But a whole generation of young Ukrainians and Russians, their lives have been permanently altered by those who sit in ivory towers. And sadly, this region has seen this multiple times over the past century. It just seems time and time again on this search for like ultimate power, more ground, more control, things like this. But these lives have been altered, and we probably haven't seen the worst of it yet, which definitely concerns me. So Zelensky on Thursday signed legislation extending martial law and military mobilization until November the 15th. Now, if martial law is not lifted, it would require postponing the national parliamentary elections scheduled to take place no later than October the 29th. Under these laws, Ukrainian men aged between 18 and 60 are not allowed to exit the country and, of course, can be mobilized and put into battle. Under Ukrainian law, martial law can be extended every 90 days. So this is the first time we've seen this extended many times. And this was put into motion at the beginning of this war. Under this legislation, elections cannot be held. Now, Zelensky has told the Washington Post in May, if we have martial law, we cannot have elections. If there is no martial law, then there will be elections. Ukrainian officials have said it is impossible to have these elections, given that the country is fighting a war for its existence, with roughly 20% of its territory occupied by Russian forces and millions of people displaced. I do ask myself, when this war ends, what are all these online bloggers, like myself and others, what are they going to do? They've made so much like of their life about this, not only using their time, but now financially. You know, people like I do YouTube basically full time. I've got some other stuff that I do, some normal work as well, but basically full-time. So a lot of people make a lot of money. A lot of Twitter accounts now are full-time working off this, and this is going to end, and they're going to, there's not going to be another war that is as interesting as this, so they're going to drop back. What are they actually going to do? Going to OnlyFans? I don't know. Like, me, myself, I've just accepted that this is going to end. I'll just do some, like, videos, gymming and shit, and enjoy talking to the people who, want to stick around. But I've already, rewritten resumes and shit, knowing, hey, that's going to end and, do something else. But I do wonder, what are all these, people actually then going to do? So there are a few other little bits and pieces I wanted to look at, and this, of course, is a Bushmaster that is on display outside of Moscow. Moscow's got a military convention-y thing on at the moment, but this makes me sad. This is a Bushy that, that I drove one of these vehicles. These are a fantastic vehicle. This one has seen better days. Now, some people are asking what this thing is. This thing here is actually just for a winch to come through, and of course the Aussie flag then on the front. And this grill here, well, that's just for the air conditioning, and that's the weapon system on top. Well, no, it doesn't have the weapon in it, but they have thermal cameras and whatever on there. Now, I also wanted to look at the ad that Ukraine has released called Overcome Your Fear. And the Telegraph here shares Ukraine targets teenage boys in recruitment campaign. Now, I don't know if this was put up and then taken down, because this is the only place that I can actually find a version of this ad. It seems that it's been half wiped from the internet. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's on Ukrainian television and it's not much online, but it seems everything's online bar this. So this lad here coming up to a German Shepherd here. They're afraid everything is fine. These are automatically generated captions, by the way, so if it's slightly wrong, we'll figure it out. But we need you, son, who knows your fear. And then he goes older. So saying we need your son. This is where Telegraph's going, Ukraine targets teenage boys in recruitment campaign. Again, young boys jumping in the water. This lad rocks up a little bit scared. He jumps, turns to a chopper. Is interesting there. You do hear go, 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 in English, what I thought was interesting as well. But this ad, so calling for the recruitment of more people, more young lads to volunteer. Now, people have pointed, you're targeting young men. Yeah, and all militaries do this. Don't think that it's wrong. Now, I've spoken openly that I think the targeting of young men for conscription or whatever, and, you're well, everyone else can live their life, but not you guys, fuck off on the front. I think that is incredibly unfair, and this is fucking every country in the world. But at the end of the day, the people that volunteer for the militaries, in absolutely overwhelming majority, in the high 90%, are young men. This is how the fucking army got me. They have to appeal to young men. I was 16 when I was I'm fucking definitely going to be in the army, and the day I was 18, I'm yep, fucking go for it. And yeah, it's just the way militaries recruit, and it's just, that's what they need. At the end of the day, they need young men on the front line. Like it or not, young men are the fittest, the fastest, the strongest, the most driven for this sort of thing. It's just, Like it or not, it's just the fucking way it is. So today is one of those days that not very much has happened on the maps. And we have these days. We have days where a lot happens and then nothing happens. And I would call this yo-yoing. And this is actually worse than it seems, because momentum in something like this is absolutely key. If momentum isn't there, the maneuver's not there, therefore it's attritional warfare. And I personally don't believe that attritional style warfare helps Ukraine. Ukraine, I believe, need to outmaneuver, outsmart, out-tactic Russia. Russia has just numbers, and we've seen before over Russia's history, they're prepared to pour numbers into things that they need to outmaneuver from there. Maybe we'll see a breakthrough in that maneuver, but I've been thinking that now for 3 months. But it does seem that momentum can't be kept up anyway. Russia cannot keep momentum in the northeast where they're making a bit of ground, and Ukraine can't keep it in the south. We have this sort of yo-yo to and from, and then make a little bit at a time. But the map, of course, we have Ukraine in the centre, the capital of Kyiv. Red areas occupied since 22, and the purple since 14. Now, those cities I'm talking of now, there are lots, but we're talking, of course, Sevastopol down in Crimea, Mariupol, Melitopol, Berdyansk. These are major places, and then we have Luhansk and then Donetsk as well. So, you know, that's where we're going to see the real like urban warfare fighting happening. Anyway, the only map updates we really see on Deep State is we do see, we heard about yesterday from Surak Maps and some other sources that Russia was able to, push some of the Ukrainians who have crossed back over this left bank with some artillery. They've been able to make some ground there, and we do see this small bit of like grey zone pop up here. So I'm not really sure if that's meaning now there's more fighting there, or Russia has been able to clear that, because Deep State just hasn't really been tracking this much. But as well, then we'll come up into this area around, I'm in the wrong spot, around Robertini. I did that again yesterday too. Now, I'd missed something yesterday, and I do apologise for it. We did see just to the west of Robertini, see where this major MSR is, like main service route. We did see Ukraine take more territory down there, and I saw it in editing, and I fucking missed it when I was doing it. But we do see just around Robertini, we do see Ukraine make more ground, pushing up then into this line of defensive works there as well. So more pushing in and around Robertini, but we know the battles are still on in and around Robertini. So let's then go to Surak Maps today, who does confirm that there is more fighting in and around Robertini. It's still going on, and that Ukraine did make a small bit of ground here. Now, this is the only map on the right-hand side here that was released from Surak Maps today. This was the one yesterday around Robertini where they said there's still heavy fighting going on. And as well, Surak Maps shows this push on this road, this main service route that we just spoke about that I missed yesterday. So confirming both of those. And this is why we use multiple maps. And if you're asking me where this actually is just out of the picture here. It's just up here. We can't see where that road comes through. But the rest of the front line, I've done some zooming in before we do this, and the front line looks like it hasn't really changed too much, but we know a lot of fighting in and around Robertini. But both Ukraine and Russia have actually really locked down on footage and stuff being then released out from these areas. So we're not getting, like in the beginning of this war, we had so much footage coming out, and we still are getting it, but nowhere near in the same quantities. But guys still wearing GoPros, we will eventually see that sort of stuff coming out. Now, I have confirmed as well across the daily Ukraine map, these changes basically are the same, but daily Ukraine isn't showing any change in and around Starmorsky Uruzani area, but is showing the same little advancement around, Robertini. Bloody, I'll blame the tumour for that one. Anyway, let's just have a look here, and this is what we did see. So we saw yesterday this little nub get cut off, and then a further push down here. So Ukraine is making more ground across this open ground down into here as they are pushing hard down into Uruzani, making a fair bit of ground. But other than that, up and down the map, there's a lot of fighting going on, a lot of everything, but we're not seeing any major changes day to day. Legends, I know this one was probably a little bit more casual than usual. I like doing casual. I sort of hate the talking, but I hope you're looking after yourselves. I hope you're having a great weekend. Tomorrow's Sunday. Don't get the Sunday blues. I know what it's like, but look after yourselves. Have a great day. Okay, bye-bye. Oh, if you'd like to support me, links down below. Got to plug. I need to stop saying fucking plug myself. Okay, see ya.